Hi, and welcome back to Politodoxy. I'm your host, Aaron Friedman. Today we have Brittany Valadez, the host of Bravely Daily on YouTube. And I would first like to start with you introducing yourself.
All right. Hi, guys. Yes, my name is Brittany Valadez, and I do have a website called bravelydaily.com, and it deals with faith content, faith and entertainment news. My background is in entertainment journalism, and I'm also a Christian, so I talk about faith-based content on there, and I love it. So basically, yeah, we would talk about stuff like Justin Bieber because he's related to faith or things like that. So, yeah. Mhm.
Wait, so Justin Bieber is related to, how is he connected to any faith?
So he identifies or calls himself a Christian. That's how he identifies that. So or anybody, let's say anybody in the faith industry is like, or not industry. Oh my gosh. Let's say anybody like in the industry that says, oh, I'm a Christian, whether or not they might actually follow the beliefs, but if they say it, something that will cover and comment on it or tell a story about it. Like even if Jessica Simpson or Britney Spears went into a church, that's something we would talk about like that.
Well, he doesn't really strike me as the religious type.
It goes back to, that's a lot of the things that we talk about in Christianity, or it's like, so we can say that we are our faith, but our actions are going to speak louder than that to a lot of people, right? So it comes down to examining what we actually believe, because if we believe certain things, then we would follow it by showing it through action.
Yes. Yes, this is one of my biggest problems with Jews who call themselves Jews, and I do not recognize them as such if they're not Orthodox. They could be modern Orthodox, no problem. What I would say the lowest tier of Judaism would be modern Orthodox. Why? Because you have to, at the very least, follow the commandments. You cannot call yourself a part of a religion without practicing the religion. It doesn't work like that. Imagine me calling myself somebody who has I've attributed to helping out in cancer research. I've never done anything of the sort, but I will take full credit for that. No, you don't get to do that. You have to participate in order to take any credit whatsoever. So with Judaism, and I say lowest tier, maybe some might take offense to that. I mean the minimum amount of actually being, in my eyes, considered a Jew would be a modern Orthodox. But anything less than that, if you're not Orthodox, then there's no way that I could recognize that as Judaism. I would assume the same way would be with Catholics. If somebody does not believe in Catholic ideology, doesn't believe in Catholic tradition, then I would say, and I'm pretty sure that that person, especially if that person does not adhere to does not go to church, does not do the things that has to be done, that person might, as a matter of fact, be actually excommunicated, because you're taking, especially somebody like Nancy Pelosi, you should have been. I think she was excommunicated. She should have been a long time ago. But anyway, what is your thoughts on that? If you don't participate, then you don't get to call yourself or take credit for something you didn't do.
This is actually one of the problems that I have in. I'm going to talk specifically about Christianity because I'm a Christian. In Christianity, I'm pretty sure you've heard this term. I don't know if you have, but it's called progressive Christianity.
Yes.
And yeah, people will say, "Oh, I'm a Christian. I'm progressive, though." But the thing about the Bible is it's never changing. So in if you call yourself a progressive Christian, you're not actually a Christian at all. Because I look at it like this: we take the Bible, which is God's holy word, right, and it has never changed. But you know what? I'm going to go through it. I don't like this. I don't like that. Now you've made your own religion. I sometimes refer to it as like cafeteria Christianity. Pick a little this, pick a little that. And I think that a lot of times, especially in the younger generations, we have people who think that they can be born into a religion. That's not how it is. It's like, yeah, it's something more. I'm sorry, I'm going to pause this because I think you can still see me, right? But something
Yes.
with my computer there. Okay, there. Yeah, I got a phone call, like shuts out everything. So let me start this again. So yes, we have people, especially in the younger generation, that think that they can kind of just be born into a religion. Now it's like, well, you know what? My grandma was Christian. My aunt was a Christian. So I guess I'm a Christian. I'm not going to follow anything that the Christians say. I'm just going to call myself a Christian. So it's like, No, you can't. Like I know in Judaism, it's not only a faith, but it's also a nationality, correct?
Yes, it is a nationality,
Mhm.
but and still, there's some people who still consider it. Well, you're born a Jew, then you stay a Jew. I don't believe in that ideology at all because, again, as much as it is a nationality, you could be nationally a Jew, but if you don't participate, then you don't get to call yourself a Jew. As a matter of fact, there is a word I came up for that. It's those guys who eat gefilte fish on Yom Kippur, meaning that they eat, yes, they eat gefilte fish, which is a traditionally Jewish food, but it's Yom Kippur. You're not supposed to eat. So that's the problem. You eat gefilte fish. Yes, look at me. I'm very Jewish. Yeah, but you're eating on Yom Kippur. That's not something you're supposed to do. So this is what I try to explain a lot of the time when we are having these kinds of debates. What if those people have a right to call themselves Jews? I don't think so. You cannot take credit for something you didn't do. You have to put in the work. I live my day as an Orthodox Jew. I put in all the work. Then comes along some guy who has never done anything in his life that resembles anything to traditional Judaism, anything at all. Maybe once kept the Shabbos, maybe once, and then comes along and he says, "Well, I am a Jew." Excuse me, I've been working all my life in order just to be able to be called that, and now you come along, if you've done none of the work and just claim all the credit. I'm not willing to share the faith with somebody who's not going to put in the work. We all work together, that's fine. If you're not going to work, you have no right to call yourself that. So go ahead, continue.
Oh yeah, it's like I look at it like this. So I was on a mission trip recently in Honduras, and I was talking to this young guy, and I was at a church, and I was asking him, about his life, and he said he was a member of the church, and I asked him, okay, that's great. So in Christianity, we have something where we know that Jesus died and he rose again. So if you're going to be a Christian, you're going to have to believe that Jesus died and rose again. Actually, the Christianity, the whole point of Christianity wrestles like it wrestles on the resurrection. And wrestles is probably the right word. It rests on the resurrection. So of course he's like, yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe that. I'm an active member of the church. All that. I said, okay, that's great. So in Christianity, a lot of times we'll say, well, Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And it's kind of become a phrase. He's my Lord and Savior, as if they go together. And they do. But it's just something that like rolls off the tongue now. So I asked him, I said, okay, so I know that Jesus is your Savior, right? Because you believe that he died and rose again for your sins. And he said, yes. And I said, but is he your Lord? And he's like, that's a really good question. So what I'm getting at is it goes back to people who will say, oh yeah, either I've been born in the faith, which they cannot, or, oh yeah, I believe Jesus died and he rose again for me. Great. But they're not living like that at all. And I said, so when Jesus is your Savior, you believe that he died and rose again. He becomes your Lord when your faith is evidenced through your actions. So your actions won't get you to Jesus. But if you really believe in him and you really love him and everything that he does, it's going to cause you to change the way you act. And that's a problem that I have with so many people claiming Christianity. I'm pretty sure you've seen plenty of people who have a Bible verse in their bio. Or
my main problem is with Catholics, is why they're not denouncing the Pope. He has multiple times referred to Mother Earth. That is pure paganism. There's no other way to see this. Pure paganism. Mother Earth. What's the other things? I'm now going blank on the other things that he has said, but there are in explicitly endorsed communistic ideology, and as well as the so-called artist for Piss Christ, the one where the Christ is in a jar of urine. And I'm like, wait, what? When I heard that he invited him, they met. I don't remember exactly all the details, but all I know that one does not just invite somebody who is actively trying to destroy their religion. As a matter of fact, I'll just point out there is this very vengeful, very, very terrible woman named Julia Hart. She left the Orthodox Judaism and she was very unhappy with her life. Fine, you want to leave? No problem with me. I mean, you that's your problem with God, not my problem. But then she started attacking and making up whole lies out of whole cloth. Nothing, almost anything she said. She was on Netflix. She was on a show called My Unorthodox Life, which was attacking Orthodox Judaism. I actually tweeted to Netflix asking them at the time, okay, now that's cool. Now do one for Muslims. Oh, but they won't do that. They could only go after certain groups, not others. Anyway, so she tried to attack Orthodox Judaism, and by the way, the attacks backed at her, which came from actually Jews who left. They left their religion. They were like, actually, listen, it wasn't for me, but this is not at all what Orthodox Judaism is like. She does say a few truths, and those things could be debated. Other things she says that are true only out of context, they're true. But when you put it into context, you see, okay, you know what? Actually, this is not that bad. Long story short is that those people who attack your religion, I will not invite her. I mean, actually, I would invite her to actually for a debate. I will definitely do that and utterly humiliate and destroy her because it's so disprovable her lies. But you do not invite them with the intent to show, oh, these people are not that bad. So you have the Pope inviting people like that, endorsing communist ideology. Wait a minute, I remember. I don't remember which president. One South American president, I think it was a president, prime minister, or general, whatever, presented the Pope with a communist hammer and sickle with Christ right on it. I don't remember, carved into it. Presented it to him, and there was no. Apparently, it's no problem. So I'm like, how could this guy? How could you? I understand you cannot. I understand that you cannot criticize the Pope. No, if he makes a mistake, you don't do that. There is some kind of respect for the office, so I get that. I understand that. But one after the other, when there is a train of abuses within Catholic ideology, I think at some point you have to say, no, this is not okay, and a new Pope should be called for. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not familiar with any of those specific instances, but I do know that, yes, we should respect people like obviously for us, respecting our president, respecting the Pope, but because they are not God, we have every right to call them out, especially when they're walking in sin. And, it's something that it's uncomfortable for a lot of us. And of course, that, as the saying goes, not one of us is perfect. But when we want to edify and help someone out, right, either grow in their faith or to change the way that they're living, we have to call out sin when it's sin. And then especially if you're going to be someone in office, and of course, in the Bible, I believe it's in Timothy, it could be in Timothy or Titus, it talks about what it means to be a person, like in my case, in a pastor, if I wanted to be, well, not me, if a guy was going to be a pastor, the things that it would require from him, like being a man of one wife, being able to raise his family well, like things like that. And if they don't live up to that, then you have every right to take them off that position because they are not God. So in regards to anybody in leadership, whether it's a pope, a pastor, or a president, we have every right to call out sin and remove people, from their place because, like I said, they are not God. And we all need accountability. And it comes to a point where we're not removable. Like if we're like, well, we're always going to be here because we're in charge. No one can tell us anything. Then it becomes a pride issue, which is sin. And it's almost like elevating ourselves to a godlike level, which we're not and we can never be. So, a lot of issues that I have within the church, Catholic or Christian, or even when it comes down to what we vote for, things like being, pro-abortion. I'm like, well, look, even if you're not going to go on a faith-based argument, do you believe in science? What does science tell us about conception and where?
I don't personally believe in science. Saying one believes in science is to admit one believes in a secular worldview. I don't believe in science. I believe science is a part of life created by God only to prove God. All science would only prove that God does exist. All of it. There is none of it that could disprove him, including the so-called Big Bang Theory. I'm just trying to figure out what is the argument. So there was a Big Bang. Okay, fine. God created a Big Bang. So, I mean, what is the, it doesn't disprove anything. Okay, fine. You want to say there was a Big Bang and all of this was created out of nothing? Fine. How did that happen? The linchpin of their argument that there was a big bang, they can't tell you how it happened. They just tell you it did. Well, isn't that also a faith-based ideology? So there's problems with that. Also,
Mhm.
on the subject as on God and getting people to be more religious, this is I actually take a lot from Matt Walsh on this, so I will give him credit, but I'm kind of refining it and putting it into my own words. So here we go. On the subject of getting people to be more religious, I've seen a lot of churches, and including some synagogues, become more and more trying to appeal to the youth, being more hip and cool, bringing in the churches. I mean, I've never walked into a church, but what I've heard and what I've seen in the videos is them starting to play modern music, bringing in modern instruments, and then going away from tradition, trying to be hip and cool. And guess what? The kids aren't buying it. The elders are sitting there and they are not really that much enjoying it. They're just there because they actually have some respect for the church. But the kids, they're not there. They're busy on their phones, or they're not at church at all. So they're not appealing to anybody, which goes to show, and the most important thing of what I'm trying to point out here is that these the religious leaders really have to step up their game. Stop trying to appeal to the youth, because if you're gonna provide and gonna serve the youth with things they could get at a Brittany, Brittany is not anymore relevant. I mean, actually now, yes, she is kind of is, but not musically wise. But Taylor Swift, if it's something they could receive at a Taylor Swift concert, then they're just going to go to a Taylor Swift concert. They're not going to go to church. Church has to be, and the same as with synagogue and a mosque. I'm very much pro any religious to a more fundamental point where you actually, and it depends what the fundamentals are. If the fundamentals is killed, then I would say, no, don't follow that. But if the fundamentals is actually behaving in a good, orderly manner, I would say, yes, the fundamentals are good. Anyway, but what happens is they are trying to serve the youth with things they could get everywhere else. The church has to be a unique experience where it elevates the soul, something they will not get anywhere else, something unique and interesting, something that keeps them and opens their mouth just looking in amazement. That's what it has to be. But no, they are now trying to be hip and cool. And what happens is the youth they're like, yeah, I could get this from the secular world. Why am I going to church to get more secularism? Doesn't make any sense. So what is your outlook on that?
Yeah, so some of the music, a lot of the music in church, I like the modern music. I like all that, the feels. Now, I do agree with you on certain things, so I'll explain kind of my thought. I know that this is one of the problems, like you said, when we're just going to go in and we're going to try to cater to the youth. I think the problem comes when we start catering to people instead of answering to God. So I remember when I was growing up, and I would have different youth pastors, and I went to some churches where I thought it was so cool. They had we'd have like pizza, and then they'd have games and all this stuff. And like as a teenager, that's so cool. But I remember thinking as I got older, I started having questions when I was going to college. If people were to ask me like the hard questions, like why would a good God allow evil? Or why your God? Why not the Muslim?
Just 1 second on that. On why would a good God create evil? I just want to quote Chesterton. I think it was Chesterton who actually said it. That my whole perception of what is good only comes from God. Therefore, my only reason why I could think something is evil is only because God told me the other thing is good. So only saying that, well, how this is this much evil? Yes. How do you know this is evil? Because God told you it's evil. So it doesn't disprove. It only proves that God does exist. You cannot disprove God by saying, oh, there's so much evil. Then another thing, that we're a fallen world. We ask question, why is there so much evil? Well, we have fallen that much that the evil correlates with that. And there are a whole bunch of other questions that I could answer for that. But continue. I just wanted to point that out because that's a very important point that people bring up as to despair and to go into a nihilistic point of view. And that has to be expelled completely. So go ahead.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, cool. You want to have the games. That's cool to draw people in. But what's going to get them to really stay? If you are, so they could go to any event center or whatever, or go hang out with their friends. But if you're going to draw them into a church, you need to give them sound theology, Because if not, you're just going to have the church as secondary. Oh, I just go there so I can hang out with my friends, or I just go there on Sundays because there's somebody cute that works at the coffee bar or whatever. But then you get these kids who are going to church and they're not getting any sound theology, whether that be any great theology at all, answering their difficult questions, or if we have a pastor who's like too afraid of offending, so they don't say anything, then you're going to get these kids, which is a problem we have now, going out and believing things that are completely against the Bible. So I'm like, if you want to have the cool music, first of all, my thought on cool music is it theologically correct? Which, you know, a lot of worship leaders are going to have to take their time and start going through, instead of just, okay, this song is trending on social media, or this, I like the beat, but you're going to have to compare it to the Bible. Is the lyrics, are they theologically sound? Okay, because what we get in our heads as we sing it, it stays in our heads. So that's important. I think a lot of churches, hopefully, if they're not doing it, they should start doing that now. And the second thing is, are you teaching sound theology? Because like you said, I agree with you. Why are you going to have all this cool stuff, this fluff, and then you're going to have these kids going out in the world? And yeah, I support abortion. I support the homosexual lifestyle, or I support this or that. And it's like, they're supposed to be going to their church that's telling them this is what the Bible says. This is not how you should be living. Like, I had a friend, really smart friend. He's really young too. And he said something about that. He said this: the church should not be a safe space for sin. And I said, exactly. That's somebody that wants to be edified and wants to change. Because if you're going to church, they always say like the church is a hospital for the sick. Yeah, we should go there because we want to get well, and we want to get well from our sin. Not just go there, have our sin, and be celebrated. Oh, we love you. We accept you. God says, yeah, come as you are. But I love you so much, I don't want to keep you that way.
Right. So I just want to get where your ideology, politically speaking. Now we're going to change up the subject. So where do you align politically speaking?
Oh, conservative, definitely. And, you know, I've been raised in a conservative family. It's been something that, you know, has been all my life. But I didn't just, you know, decide, well, because my mom and dad are conservative, so therefore I'm going to be conservative. No, doesn't make sense. When I look at what I believe from the Word of God, what party would align more with that? If tomorrow the Democrats were all about, or if tomorrow the left was all about voting this way, or like, we're not going to be in support of abortion, we're not going to be in support of...
That's not going to happen.
Like,
it's intrinsic to the left. The idea, left-wing ideology, has always been pro-death. You could trace it back to the French Revolution, the mass killings. That's actually where I would put it, like the culmination of all of leftist ideology up until that point. So there was a lot of leftist ideology before the French Revolution, but when it culminated into actual action, that's when it happens. And it was feckless traditionalists like the King Louis, who did not kill the people who should have been killed. Instead, 600,000 people were killed and thrown out of France. If he would have killed the right people and enforced that he's king, he's going to do what has to be done. And I know nowadays people are going to be very upset on that because, oh, that's a dictatorship. I have big news for you. Dictatorship is not that terrible in compared to what actually happened in France throughout what they themselves called the Terror. And then you had Napoleon, who came into power. And by the way, he was a very good leader. Whatever you heard about Napoleon being this terrible dictator, that's all British propaganda, which, by the way, they're the British. They're their enemy. Of course, they're going to spread propaganda on Napoleon. But Napoleon brought back the Catholic Church into France. The revolutionaries, they threw out the Catholic Church. He brought back stability, and then he conquered Europe. He lost in Russia, but he conquered Europe. He was a great leader, and the French were not... They were not a people that was ready for so-called democracy. I think it was Edmund Burke, the great British statesman, who said that the French, being a people not ready for democracy, it's better for them to have dictatorship. I'm paraphrasing, but that's a British great statesman who was actually in favor of the American Revolution. Long story short is that at the time he said that these people are not ready. Their minds are not is not liberty oriented. They are killing oriented because it was a leftist revolution. So go ahead. I want to hear from you what you have to say.
Oh, no, I think I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that subject. But yeah, I mean, I definitely believe like I would say my allegiance is not to a specific party. It's to God first, because if I follow God, it's going to tell me how I'm going to vote. who I'm going to vote for. And it's just, that's just what I wish people would look. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people tend to vote based on skin color, other ideologies that are just not aligned with the Lord. I'm like, if I would stop looking at, for me as a minority, I'm never going to look at a candidate and be like, oh, that's a Hispanic, I'm going to vote for them. No. What do they believe in? Where are their values? That's where I align with what I vote for. And it just happens to be that a lot of what I believe is more found in conservative values. And so if I could get people to go back to the Bible, read the Bible, and not just quote a verse here and there, because that's the unique thing about Christianity is we look at the Bible as a whole. It's a collective, and we have too many people just quoting a verse here and there, and then okay, well, like the classic, "Do not judge," as if it sums up the whole Bible. I'm like, there's a verse in there that Jesus himself said about righteous judgment.
It's kind of weird to me. What do you mean, do not judge? Literally, God destroyed the entire world by flooding the world in the time of Noah. He almost destroyed Nineveh, the Babylonian city. Almost destroyed it. If it weren't for what was the prophet's name? I don't remember. Sorry, it escapes me his name. Went over there and told them to repent. They repented, and God did not destroy them. Or the Tower of Babel destroyed the entire city and the tower itself. God constantly judges. So this idea of God will not judge and all kinds of behavior is good. That's not a religion. That's just hedonism. Which brings me to circling back to the point of actually doing the things that has to be done, actually participating in the religion instead of just taking advantage of the name. Oh, now I'm a Jew. Oh, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I don't actually do anything. I've no vested interest in the religion. If the religion disappeared tomorrow, literally nothing in my life will change, but I am still going to take advantage. I have to say that one is not born into greatness. One actually achieves greatness by action, and some are born with the expectation to greatness, but you're not born into greatness. You have to achieve it by action. And those people who just take advantage of the idea, well, I'm born a Christian, so I guess I'm just going to heaven, or the same with the Jew. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. You have to put in the actual work and actually do the things that is done.
You know what I find interesting? I'm going to go back to what you said about judgment, and then I'm going to go to this. So you might have to remind me, but I don't know if you remember the old song Miley Cyrus saying, like, we can't stop. I forget how it goes, but she goes, only God.
Oh, I'm not that much interested in most secular songs.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, let me tell you this. In the song, she says, only God can judge us, I think. And I was like, I saw a quote online and they were like, a lot of people say, oh, only God can judge me, forgetting that one day he will. Like, I think people's judgment is nowhere compared to God's judgment on us. So be careful when you say, oh, only God can judge me. Do you really, really want God to judge you, though?
That's a good one. That is a good point. Do you really want God to judge you? That's a very good one. But there's another problem with that, actually. God commanded the Israelites to, and not only the Israelites, but all the nations of the world, to create judges, to create courts and judges and leaders. What do courts, judges, and leaders do? What is one of their main objectives? Oh, yes, it is to judge other people to either to death if they are guilty of such, or to any other of their crimes, or to give them whatever good things they've done. Good deeds should be rewarded. But ultimately, God gave us a right to judge and do action upon those judgments. And then there is ultimate judgment, which could only be done by God. That's not deniable. Nobody's denying that. But those who say only God can judge me, no, God is going to ultimately judge you. But everybody else has a right to judge you as well. As a matter of fact, most people, they judge certain behaviors. So, and then there is the idea of prejudice, prejudging somebody, which nowadays it's some kind of a dirty word. I don't really think it's a dirty word. Most people are prejudiced, prejudging situations, so-called judging a book by its cover. If I see something that looks like fire, or I see here is one. If I see a frog that is all kinds of colors in the jungle, I'm going to be prejudiced and think that could be poisonous, and I'm not going to touch that. Yeah, but you're being prejudiced. It doesn't matter. People always people are prejudiced when it comes to a lot of situations. We make prejudgments just it's a natural, normal thing. So to say that, well, you can't judge me. Not only can I judge you, I could also, based on your past behaviors or even looks, such as all kinds of tattoos and all of those kinds of things, I could make a judgment. Okay, this person is not somebody who, maybe not somebody who should be taken seriously. For instance, for example, there was this person on Twitter who replied to me, and I just looked at the name of the person in the handle. The name had a Ukrainian flag and 4 times booster, and I replied to that person, "Do you really want me to take you seriously? I cannot take you seriously. I'm not even gonna engage, because." And this is I think you're gonna love this story
Oh gosh.
about stupidity. I do not debate people who are stupid, who I deem them as to be stupid. And this is why. There was once a zebra and a tiger. The zebra and the tiger were arguing if the grass was green or blue. The zebra said it was blue, and the tiger said the grass was green. The zebra said, "Let's go to the lion and he will judge." They went to the king of the jungle. The lion came out of his what's it called again? Of his cave. Came out of his cave, and the zebra said, "Lion, oh dear lion." The tiger says that the grass is green. I am saying that it is blue. What do you judge? The lion says that it is indeed blue. And the zebra starts jumping. He's happy. He starts dancing. He says, "Lion, I want your majesty, I want you please to punish the tiger for wasting my time and for arguing with me on such a pointless subject." And the lion said, "Tiger, you have to stay in your cave for an entire month. You cannot go out. You cannot eat meat for an entire month, and you could only sleep for 4 hours a day. That's your punishment." And the zebra is happy, walks away. The tiger asks from the lion, "I will accept what you say. I accept your punishment, but do you really believe that the grass is blue?" The lion says, "No, the grass is indeed green." The tiger asks from the lion, "Then why did you say that the grass is blue?" He said, "Sorry. Yeah, why did you say the grass was blue, and why did you punish me?" He said, "Because first, to get rid of the zebra, and second, why did I punish you? Because somebody as wise as you are should not be engaging or taking part with somebody who is as stupid as the zebra. You deserve a punishment for arguing with a stupid animal like the zebra. Do not engage. If the person you see is indeed stupid, you understand. You have to use common sense. This is all judgment calls. You have to use common sense to understand. But if that is the case, do not engage. This is your time is very important. And if you engage with idiots and you associate yourself with idiots, not only you might become one, but people will automatically assume that you might be as well an idiot. Your punishment, and you do deserve punishment. The idiots have been given a voice, and it's about time that voice should be taken away. And I'm not talking about legal means. Yes, we all have freedom of speech. I understand. Yes, but we're talking about giving them your time in order for their voice to be heard. Do not. I think it was, and I will let you speak in just a moment. I just want to point this out about what Andrew Tate said. Now, I know a lot of people don't like him, but he does say a lot of good points, and here's one, a very good point, on the transgender issue. He said that we could all just, when it comes to the transgender issue, we could all just collectively say, "No, this is stupid," and we're not going to debate it. We're going to laugh in their face and continue on. But because we have such a huge amount of the population who take these people seriously, now we have to have a national debate instead of actually arguing what the taxes should be on real things that actually affect us. Now we're busy with a teeny tiny minority who are delusional and busy with their needs. And why? Only because there are certain people who have decided that to take these arguments seriously. That is why. So we have to take away that time. We have to reclaim our time and stop giving these people the time of day. So what do you think on that? And this is also and this kind of ties into the subject of people who say, "Well, God says you love all of the that you should love whoever you love." So that goes into the gay marriage question, which is not that much of a question. It's pretty obvious that gay marriage is not a thing. It just doesn't exist. marriage is a specific definition, right? It's a specific thing. Now you could have a unity, fine. You want to get so-called married, whatever that looks like, no problem. I mean, I don't care. I guess I'm more libertarian on that. But it's not marriage, just as a matter of fact. Marriage is strictly between a man and woman. You cannot change that definition. I mean, apparently they can, but it should not be permissible. Anyway, long story short is that this ties into that we have people who are now making arguments into Christian theology, now trying to change the entire debate of what it means to be Christian or even Orthodox Jewish or any other religion, saying, oh, you have to be more tolerant, God says this, and then taking out things out of context. And we are debating them for some reason. They're not making valid arguments. They are lying purposely, but we're taking them serious.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Like, well, one of the things goes back to judging. If you say anything that's different than their opinion, you are automatically judging. Well, I think that we need to look at what judging actually is. Like you said, a lot of us judge. I can look at somebody and think, wow, she's wearing a business suit. She must run a Fortune 500 company, when in fact, she just wanted to wear a business suit for her class that day because she's giving a speech. So every one of us will judge people. Now, do we judge correctly? No. A lot of the time, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, because a lot of times people will judge you like based on your appearance. And if we get offended, if someone if I am dressing looking like I just walked out of my house every day and someone's like, man, she looks so sloppy. Well, it's because I do look sloppy. There's sometimes when our judgments can be correct and sometimes when our judgments are incorrect. And then I think also in regards to judgment as well. So I know in the Bible, it talks about, I think in the New Testament, about judging. So judging others says do not judge, but what it means in that context of that scripture, again, like you said, context, people they won't read the verses around it or the whole Bible as a whole. They'll just pick and choose things. It says in that specific passage that not to judge because the same measure will be measured unto you. So what it means is if I were to judge someone, I would want to judge them in the fact of like the basis of how I would judge myself. It becomes bad judgment when I look at somebody and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that person's an alcoholic. Like they are into sex work. I never want to be like them. So I'm not going to associate myself with them. And that's a whole separate thing of judging. But we can judge. I think good judgment is based on helping someone out. So if I see like my friend, if she's just like, if he or she is struggling with alcoholism or whatever, righteous judgment would tell me, hey, I need to help that person out. So let me go and help you out. So that's a whole topic I'm getting on about judgment, because I feel like so many people will accuse us if we have a different opinion than what they say. Automatically, you're judging me. No, I just explained to you what the different types of judgment are. I'm just giving you a different opinion. You just don't want to hear the truth sometimes,
There's a question to that, by the way. Why would you be offended that I'm judging you? Because what judgment ultimately is, it's have an expectation and a standard apply to everybody or to somebody, depending on the person, who that person is, especially if that person is of high value, such as a priest or a rabbi or a leader. You would have a higher judgment and a higher standard for them than the average person, because they are leaders specifically for them. But then you have for the average person. So when you say, oh, I can't believe you're judging me, that is so terrible, what you're saying is, how dare you even apply to me any standard? I should be an animal. I should be allowed to be an hedonistic animal and do whatever I want to do. No. I'm actually, when I'm judging you, what I'm doing is some kind of mercy. And I believe that you're a human being. I believe that I'm applying a standard that I would apply to myself. Not all the time, but depending what your position is, if you're a leader or not, different standards. Anyway, but I would apply a specific standard to every person, that they have to behave like a normal human being, and me judging them and them getting offended is them saying, how dare you say that I should behave in a certain way and a certain expectation? I should be as vulgar and as terrible as possible, and nobody should be able to stop me.
Yeah, that's another way to look at certain things. I've never thought about it like that. And it's like, actually, yeah. I mean, obviously, everybody would prefer not to be judged, but sometimes it's like, you know what? Maybe I should kind of take myself a little bit more seriously in the way I present myself, because people are going to be looking right away at our outward appearance first. And I know in the Bible it talks about, I think it was in like man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart, which is true. But it's saying right then and there that men will look at your outward appearance, how you present yourself. people are going to judge a lot based on that. So are we going to take any personal responsibility to clean ourselves up, whether how we look visually or the things that we do? So, I don't know. Just are we going to take any what's the word? What I'm trying to get at, like a self-responsibility or self-pride, I guess, in the good way. Yeah. So I know we were talking about Andrew Tate and I guess like the transgender movement and homosexuality, correct?
Not he didn't he actually did not talk about homosexuality. He basically does not care. He says whatever you do, whatever. As far as I know, he doesn't really care about that. But he's talking about specifically. Oh, by the way, just now I remember Jonah. Jonah was the prophet.
Yeah.
Just now I remember. Anyway, but what he's talking about is the idea that we have a certain amount of people who've decided that this should be taken seriously, and therefore now the entire society has to suffer. Why? Because a certain group of people who don't even identify with that now have decided, you know what, this is now a subject, this is now a thing for debate. And it actually ties into what he has to say about the Matrix, that this is organized. This is not something that is natural. It is artificial, and it's specifically made to dumb everybody down. Now everybody has to be busy with these kinds of stupid arguments instead of elevating our philosophers and our professors, our teachers, our leaders. Every person of authority now has to bow down to this weird ideology and now has to cater to that, instead of actually catering to the greater questions of life. So this is in order to dumb down everybody. Now that this goes into another thing. Again, these things are common, to one extent or another, very commonsensical, and certain people might get offended. Why are you talking about Andrew Tate? You know what he's done. I know all the things. I know everything that there is to be said about Andrew Tate, but the sheer fact what he said there, it's true. It doesn't matter who says the thing. Actually, it kind of does matter who says the thing. If a terrible person tells you to do something, and it may look like something that is common sense, then you have to second guess that. Just be critical about it. Try to make sure, be cautious. Just try to make sure that this is actually the right thing to do. But once that is confirmed, this is the right thing, then it doesn't matter who said it. This is the right thing. What he said there is 100% correct. So it doesn't really bother me, whoever says it. And anyway, by the way, a lot of the things that is put on Andrew Tate is just complete bogus lies, and he does have there. I do find some issue with him, but he has been more or less. He has been a very good influence on young adults. He's been the reason. I'm kind of going off subject, but I just want to point this out. The reason why young people flock to Andrew Tate is not because of the things he's done in the past. This is not the reason. The reason is because what he's doing right now, and the things he's doing right now is mostly, the vast majority of it is good. What he's saying is good, and certain people might say, well, this or that. Okay, fine. You want to critique any specific, fine, but I could do the same with Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson. I could critique any specific of what they said. The vast majority of those people, what they say is good. The same is with Andrew Tate. He does have problems in the past. Fine, we could discuss that, but this is not the reason why people are flocking to him. Anyway, I've gone off subject, but I just wanted to clear that out.
Oh yeah, no worries. I think sometimes I feel that the media has a lot to do with what is elevated and what's made the discussion of the moment. I think that a lot of the media are pot stirrers, and they will take things to see what's going to get clicks, what's going to make money. Ultimately, it comes back to the love of money. And if it means we craft a title in a certain way, or we highlight this part of the story and not this part of the story, or we give a voice to this person versus that person, that's what's going to get people talking. So I do think the media has a lot of responsibility, which is why I would tell anybody to, when you choose what media to watch, and if you want to watch, CNN and Fox News, like, at the time it was the complete opposite, or whatever. Hey, watch both, because why? It's going to make you a better thinker, to see if you can spot the truth from the lie in both of those news outlets. But I really think that the media has a lot to do with that. And of course, I mean, the moral issue of sin. People, sin just seems to be like what everyone wants to do. That's the sinful nature. But I really do think the media has a lot to do with what we end up talking about and making it.
Do as thou wilt, as they say, and This is one of the things that why I'm that much against hedonism, and this is also a problem why I have what I have about liberalism. I believe that liberalism does have satanic roots. Why? Because liberalism has its roots to the never-ending revolution, the abolishment of the current state of things, as Karl Marx said, and do as thou wilt, and that is hedonism. Do whatever is comfortable for you. What is liberalism? To liberate oneself. Okay, so liberate oneself from what? From the self. Liberate oneself from any boundaries whatsoever. That is hedonism. That is do as thou wilt. So now you have to ask the question, is the person who is liberated from any law prohibiting him from doing any kinds of drugs or any kinds of sex work, are they really, really that much liberated? Is the person addicted to cocaine not a slave to their own appetites and desires? Liberalism replaces one God for another. It replaces the God that you serve, that you are, as it says in the Bible, you are a lamb to God, or it switches up that where you are somebody who serves a greater and more powerful deity, to it turns you into God, where ye shall be as gods, as the serpent says. You will liberate yourself. You will not follow any orders, no boundaries, no rules. You make your own rules, which is none. You don't even make any rules. So this is what I see liberalism as: some liberating oneself from any higher authority and from the self, turning yourself into a slave to yourself. And why would you would want to ask the question, though, why would one turn into a slave to oneself? Maybe one could just be liberated. That's impossible. Human beings are fundamentally spiritual. What was the first thing that the Jews said when they were freed from Egypt? What was the first thing they wanted to do? They wanted to go back. Why?
They were
Why? Because they wanted to be able to serve. Because they were this is two tier. This is multifaceted. One is they wanted to serve. Second is because they wanted to be taken care of. But there's now another thing. Moses went up into heaven. Moses went up into heaven to then brought down the stone tablets. And what did he see? The first thing, a golden calf that the Israelites created. Why would they create a golden calf in the process? It doesn't make any sense. They have seen the sea split, 10 plagues. They've seen manna. They've seen God brought. They begged for meat, so God supplied them with. I don't remember what kind of bird, but they started eating meat. Long story short, they saw all these kinds of miracles, and they created a golden calf. Why? Did they actually believe that the golden calf is going to save them? Yes. They actually did believe that. Why? Because they did, for the time being, no leadership. There was no, more or less, Moses was not there. They could not communicate to God. They didn't have a set of rules what they were supposed to do. What happened was, human beings are fundamentally spiritual. They didn't have a God to turn to. They created their own. That's the story over and over again, all the time, everywhere you can see this. So to say that, well, I'm just going to liberate myself, and I'm not going to become a slave to something else. I'm just going to be myself. Impossible. You are in part a soul. So you cannot be your only self as the body. You also have a soul which has a longing to something spiritual. You can liberate your body, so-called, but then your soul will start looking and you will find something else. It's impossible to just be a human being without serving a higher purpose. And you will say, oh, what about these certain scientists and so on? Well, they're serving science. Their entire theology is science, and part of it is also just denying God. That's another thing, which I just find it. Why wouldn't you want God? That the people who say they don't want God to exist, they don't believe in and they also don't want that. There's no hope for, more or less, there is no hope for them, because why wouldn't you want that? Why would you want only this to be the entire existence? Don't you want to find your family again? Don't you want to? Why wouldn't you want to have an eternity in paradise? So I want to now move it over to you.
Everything you said, it's like it's true. It's always, I think, in this day and age right now, and it seems to be, I guess, throughout history, even the example of the Israelites, sometimes even if we claim we don't have a God, or we don't want to believe in God, or don't want to serve God, like you said, we're just going to replace the one true God with another God. And right now, I think it's the God of self, of I want to answer to me, and my opinions are what's right, and you can't tell me anything. And like you said, well, I want to be able to do what I want. Yeah, but doing what you want a lot of times ends up harming you, and not just you, others around you. I think somebody says, I forgot. A lot of people will say that when they find God, when they come to know Jesus Christ and what he did for us and how much they love him, they're like, that's when I found the truth. And I was becoming a slave to everything else. And this is what I want. This is who I want to call my master now. And because you're right, we are a soul. We're ultimately searching for what is the truth. And if we claim we reject God, then we're going to say over here, well, I'm going to reject, like you said, scientists. I'm going to reject God, but their God is science. Their God is self. In their mind, they're the smartest thing. And it's like, sometimes I question, I'm like, if people don't believe in God and they are like an atheist and they don't think that our soul will go anywhere, I'm like, if this is the life that is as good as you're gonna get, ew. I don't understand. I don't understand the concept of I don't believe in God. I just believe in self and now. And earth as it is as good as it's gonna get. I'm like, sometimes you gotta question, like, why would I want to live here? There has to be something else.
It's pure nihilism. That's what it is. And I actually made an episode, which I actually implore you to watch. Sorry, not to watch. It was actually an audio episode where I discuss a very interesting subject on the issue of being a agnostic, just to be agnostic. It's basically somebody who's agnostic, doesn't really know. Okay, fine. I have no problem with those people because they want to figure out. Okay, fine. You don't know. You want to figure out that then there is no problem. We could have normal conversations. But then there are agnostics who say that we can't know. We cannot know these kinds of things. We just don't know. And it goes to the same subject of we cannot know the difference between a man and a woman. We don't know if a child is a man or is a boy or a girl. We can't know all kinds of other things. We just can't know these kinds of things. And I say, no, actually we can. We can actually know stuff. We actually do have logos. We have divine logic, common sense, which goes to the argument on common sense. I've seen a lot of people say common sense is not that common anymore. It actually is common. Everybody has common sense. Most people just don't know how to use it. They don't know how to tap into that and utilize it. They don't know how to use the common sense, something that everybody has, more or less everybody, and use that and to apply to their life, their daily life. And common sense has nothing to do with facts or data. It is what it is to understand and compartmentalize facts and data and turn it into a narrative. That's what common sense is. Being able, it's a divine logic that basically most people have, but most people don't know how to use it. So it's still common. Most people have it. They're not taught how to use it, which it is a tragedy in and of itself. So on the subject of people not being able to use common sense and the entire society is falling apart culturally, and where would you, and this will be, I think this could be the last subject on the agenda, where would you say started the entire cultural decay? Where would you say, again, we have had leftist ideas since the dawn of time. So, but it didn't start at the dawn of time. At the dawn of time, we have only, so I hate this word, progressed, but it just as the most simple term, progressed, we have progressed. But at some point, we've started regressing and we've not gotten back to that. I would argue, I'll just put out my argument and I want to hear what you have to say. I would say when the regression really started is at the 1950s. Sorry, at the end of the 1950s with the Kennedy election, with the new wave of liberalism with Kennedy. I know a lot of people, they love Kennedy. He was a buffoon, he was an idiot, and he stole the election from Richard Nixon. And Kennedy, he was not a good guy. I made an episode exposing all the Kennedy lies. Camelot did not exist. He was a totally complete utter buffoon who killed our allies in South Vietnam, got us involved in Vietnam in the first place, actually. Long story short is, I'm not going to get too much into that because I don't want to get off topic, but with that start of this new cool hip wave of liberalism, that's where the 1960s, that's exactly where it started. So that's what I believe. The long march through the institutions that Saul Alinsky said, that's when it started in the 1960s when he wrote Rules for Radicals. So where would you say started the entire cultural decline?
Honestly, I'm going to go back way, way, way back to Genesis. And you're thinking, what? But I love this. In the garden, when the snake, the serpent, deceived Eve, it started with, did God really say that? Because he could get Eve to second guess. And it kind of reminds me of today, when you know how we were talking about earlier, about people that have common sense, but they don't know how to use it. Like right away, the baby's born, boy, girl. We know how you can tell the difference. But people believe, well, all of a sudden, no, there's 72 genders. Wait, and then they start second guessing themselves. Well, maybe there is. Even though there clearly is a boy and a girl. It kind of like reminds me of the serpent. Did God really say that though? Just getting you to question things. And then it starts getting you to question your own sanity and questioning, well, is this really immoral? Is this really sin? Is it really going to hurt anybody? Is it real? Is it really? Is it really? And then when we have so many, is it really? It's like, well, you know what? Doesn't even matter. There's not even no moral line. I can do whatever I want now. And then, of course, we say, well, maybe it was in the 50s, like you said, or the 60s or the 70s that had the different liberation movements and feminism and all these things that started, or the sex, drug, rock and roll. But every generation had their areas of sin. It's just now we have the internet to illuminate it, the phones that makes it easier to access, like pornography or things like that, that you didn't have back then, but you still had harlots and drunkards. I mean, we can even go back to the Bible and just look at the sin that was abound in there. I mean, hello, Sodom and Gomorrah, wiped out. So I think it really does come back to the serpent in the garden, getting us to question the truth, getting us to question God. And ultimately what we have now, well, we're gods, which is totally blasphemy.
Okay, so I think you misunderstood the question. So I definitely agree with you to one extent or another that that was original sin. So that's obviously where I agree. Although I would have to put that also into perspective that then none of the other subsequent things that happened throughout the entire Bible wouldn't have happened if it weren't for that one thing, which may or may not be a good thing, but just as a matter of fact, it wouldn't have happened. So that is an interesting perspective to see. But I'm just talking about the cultural decay within the United States. Where would you say started the entire cultural decay just within the United States?
Yeah, So I guess in general, I would always say original sin, because that would lead eventually to what is the decay here. Now, you could say the 50s. Yeah, it's maybe. I think a lot of when you think of like straight up sin, at least more recent, you think of the 60s and the women's liberation movement, which we know that there is definitely new waves of feminism, and some feminism, could be considered good because obviously
no feminism is good. There's no what is the idea of feminism? What is that
well,
idea?
it depends on the definition. Yes. So if you ever gonna think, like, I never think that women are better than men, or the one shirt that gets on my nerves, and I'm pretty sure you know the phrase of what is it where they say that the future is female? I'm like, well,
how the hell are you going to procreate?
Literally, that is my question. When I saw that, I was like, do they not see how the hell?
I think what they mean is that the females are going to take the authority over. They're gonna take the mantle of authority over from the men, which I have to ask. That has never existed in the entire history of the world, where there was a female-led society. Now there have been queens, great authority figures, but as a rule, the females were never the mechanics, never the gold, silver. Iron smiths. They were never any of the hardworking, like the literal hard labor. They never did any of that. So unless they could figure out, the feminists could figure out a way to start doing that, until I see feminists take over the mechanic industry first, I think, as they say, first clean up your room, then we will talk about you taking over the world. But on feminism, the thing, how I see feminism, again, it's liberation of oneself. That's one thing, as we've already discussed. It's liberalism. But another thing that feminism is, it's something that to afford females uber rights, super rights above them. Because why can't it just be egalitarianism? Everybody will be judged by the product of their own labor, whatever they can achieve. Their own achievement, they would be they would be judged by the sum they have achieved. Why can't it be that? Why does it have to be feminism? Oh, what is feminism? Feminism is super uber rights, something affording people, favoring them over other people who are more qualified, who have better abilities, who are stronger, smarter, faster, and every other category, every metric you want to use, they are better. We're gonna no because that person's a female. Now we're not gonna look at that. So this is what I see feminism as. It's literally the word fem is as in female, as in a woman, as in going against the other. You cannot have, oh, female is about equality. How is that possible? You are literally only saying that the word itself is favoring one sex over the other. So it can't be that. So there is no such thing in my book, in what I believe that there is no such thing as any wave of feminism was good. Not the first, not the second, not the third. There was no good wave of feminism. There are certain rights that women got throughout the years, which was, by the way, enforced by men, given to them by men, given up by men. So there is that. But the idea, the feminist ideology is satanic through and through. It is liberalistic through and through, and I utterly oppose every wave of feminism.
I really think that a lot of what happens things that we have now was from distorted views. So sometimes I think that with, they say, oh, we had a very patriarchal society like in the 50s or stuff like that. But I wonder if some of it was men taking things out of context, particularly the verses in Ephesians about submission. So it was like, well, we're going to be, we're rulers. I know in the Old Testament, obviously there was a patriarchal society in biblical times. And it's things when we take what God says out of context and we create this, we have domineering men. And then women are like, well, wait, I've been being mistreated so horribly by my husband or men in the workplace, because it was, again, people taking the Bible out of context. And then you have these women say, well, we need to be getting the same pay as men. And then all of a sudden, what sounded like a good thing and maybe had good intention, like, well, I'm being mistreated, it became into super bad. Like when we perverse things, when we take things out of context and we perverse it, it becomes horrible. And now you have what we have nowadays, the feminism of, we're just not going to be equal to men. We have to beat them. And it's like, wait, that's not how it goes. I'm fully a complementarian, and like, men were created for this and they have these skills and women have these skills, and it just goes together. I don't want to do certain things that men can do. And there are certain things that I do that they can't do, that we just work. But it's like, I don't understand how people don't see that. It's like, no, like you said, like we were saying earlier, the future is female. It's all about female, or the toxic, whatever. Like I'm going to be like, I don't understand, people. What is wrong with admitting that we are different, that we go together? I don't understand. Like that's literally
I take a very much more. This is gonna be it's gonna be a very hot topic, but I take the view that the patriarchy was actually a very good thing, and this is why: because men, in their natural role, is to be a leader. What is the patriarchy? Being a leader. Now, of course, there's the abuse of patriarchy, where one thinks, oh, okay, I am the leader, so therefore anything I do, anything and everything I do must be good, and therefore I cannot be wrong, and then that's when the abuse starts. But what patriarchy is to me, what I understand it to be, is men taking their natural role in the society and being good at actually what they do. Now so that's why I have said this some time ago, and I continue to say so. Bring back the patriarchy. We have to bring it back. The alternative has not worked out. So if you want to say, well, that's not the answer. Okay, first let's bring back something that actually was functional. It was functional to one extent or another. Then we could, if you want to exchange it with something else, we will have that discussion. But first, whatever is happening right now is definitely not working. It's destroying the families. The nuclear family is being destroyed. The society is crumbling. Religion has fallen apart. All social morals, norms, and behaviors, tradition, everything is falling apart. Why? Because of these liberal ideologies that promised you everything will get better, and it didn't get better. Why? When I say, well, these things didn't get better, let's go take a few steps back and figure it out from there. Why is that so controversial? Because apparently, we all know this. because they go counter to the revolution. And this is counter-revolutionary ideology. This is counter what the long march through the institutions, the never-ending revolution, the current abolishment of the current state of things. I'm trying to remember all the Karl Marx quotes from the book. I'm trying to remember. But all of these things, it goes counter to that. So therefore, the other side now reacts with the biggest amount of vulgarity as possible. So I think, okay, go ahead.
I think, okay, so it goes back to, in the book of Ephesians, this is a hugely like talked about, debated subject in Christian circles, or if you go on The View and you're a Christian, they're going to always ask you, specifically if you're a woman, this. So what do you think about the submission verses in the New Testament? Oh no. So again, we were talking about patriarchy. It depends on the definition of what it is. Like there's toxic, I hate the phrase toxic masculinity, but it's not
Wait. I would just want to point this out. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. But if there ever were such a thing as toxic masculinity, it would be men convincing women to sleep with them, and then convincing that the possibility of a child, if there actually is a child evolved further on, is actually a clump of cells, and to abort that child, that I would actually consider toxic masculinity.
Well, I mean, I know what you're saying about not being toxic masculinity, but it's a phrase that we use, right? People use.
Again, I told you, it doesn't exist. If you could convince me of something, it would be that.
Well, okay. So when it comes to the phrase toxic masculinity, the reason why it's not actually true is because true masculinity would not take advantage or not take advantage of women, would not commit all these sins, would be very honorable and, in serving God. So that's where people are like, wait, what? I thought, okay, there's the definition of why there is no such thing as toxic masculinity, because if you're truly masculine, you're going to be serving God. So, but yeah, so in Ephesians, it talks about wives submit to your husbands, and people just go crazy. And it's, oh my gosh, how offensive. Like, look, the patriarchy. But again, I say, read the verses around it. So in the book of Ephesians, it talks about wives submit to your husbands, but it says, men, love your wives like Christ loved the church. Jesus Christ, meaning he died on the cross for our sins. He took our sins on his death. So yeah, we women, we submit to our husbands. Again, we have the right to choose now who we're going to marry. So we need to choose wisely, number one. But then the guy has to die for us, if so be it. So who really has, if you think about it, you're going to compare the difference. I don't think I mind submitting to this guy who I chose and who he chose me, and he's amazing and I love him, because he would have to give up his life for me if it came down to it, because he's the provider and the protector. I don't think I have such a bad deal here. And I think that, it goes back to in the Bible, God created man first, right? There's that order. And then God created women. And I think that I encourage women on my channel, like, women, you don't realize how much power you do have, particularly now. You also have responsibility in choosing who you marry. You're not going to be forced to be married unless, you're living in some, other culture or something like that. So why don't you choose wisely?
Yes.
Who you're going to marry? Because if you choose wisely, you're not going to have a hard time submitting to your husband, because you're going to want to. You're going to look to him as a leader. Like, I know in me as a woman, I am looking for a leader, someone who's going to lead me in the family. But women don't see it as that way, because, the media has distorted it for them that, no, you need to be an independent woman. You need to do this. You need to do that. Men are horrible. That is not true. And too many women have believed that lie. It's so sad.
To that subject, I just want to also, and I think this is going to be the last point on the subject of women have to be empowered and all that. And by the way, I just hate that everybody now talks about being empowered. I'm like, why do you have to be empowered? Why can't you just submit to something? Why can't you have any rules and boundaries? Why can't you have any standard apply to yourself and just be a normal human being? I have to be empowered this way or that way. Why is everybody so power hungry? Everybody's become a bunch of tyrants. Anyway, on that, but we have told that women, they have to be empowered and all that. And I just want to ask the question to those women. Do you think that every single woman, up until the point that you were born, were dumb? Every single woman who has submitted to their man, every single woman who had a functional family, all of them were dumb, all of them were oppressed, every single one was was what's the syndrome called? Trying to remember the syndrome. Stockholm
Like,
syndrome. They all every single one was abused. Were put in a terrible situation. Are you out of your mind? You're saying that the entire history of the human race was a complete women were a complete joke up until the point feminism came and fixed everything and created the current culture we live in. I'm sorry, when I say bring back the patriarchy, you have to come back with a valid argument to say why we shouldn't, because as we see, patriarchy worked. Whatever you wanted to fight, well, this woman got abused, fine, I condemn that as well as you do, fine. Now, can we talk about all the other great families that we have brought up until this point? In order to say that feminism was needed, is to say that every woman up until that point was oppressed, Stockholm syndrome, was taken advantage of, and so on. Every single one. You have to because there was no such thing as feminism up until that point. So to say that only feminism is the right ideology is to say that everything beforehand was trash, which that goes to say that liberalism is that. It's basically that. It's a never-ending revolution. Whatever was in the past, it's not worth it. Let's not discuss that. That's not good. Only whatever happens in the future. The futurists, they have the right state of mind. We should never look at tradition, never look at our at the wise people who have lived before us. I'm trying to warn us, which goes to the saying of history. The one thing we learn about history is that we don't learn anything about history. I think we could finish the episode right here. So
Yeah.
I would first want you to say where people can follow you, where to subscribe to your channel, and all the places they could continue if they're interested to continue this discussion, where they could continue this discussion.
All right, friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I enjoyed this chat. And if you guys want to check out my stuff, you can go to bravelydaily.com, my website, or Bravely Daily on YouTube. And you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, X. I don't really get on there too much, Facebook. And it's just my name, Brittany Valadez, which is probably on the screen. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation. I did.
And for those who want to reach out to me, you could reach out to me on Twitter at Aaron Politodoxy. You could email me at politodoxy@gmail.com, or you could reach out to me on Instagram at Aaron Friedman. And please, I ask everybody, please leave 5 stars. You could also leave a comment. I think it's a new thing on Spotify where you could leave a comment. So you can leave a comment here on Spotify or on YouTube. You could also leave a comment where I ask of you, subscribe, leave a like. And I thank you very much for listening to this episode. And remember, my fellow radicals, stay political.